It felt bad to step away from the trauma because, like, on the south side of Chicago, I mean, we were saving.
Why you feel bad about that?
You know, it's that we're saving lives. Like, every day I go into work, young brothers that are coming in, paralyzed, shot up, they get to, you know, wake up and look at me taking care of them. And that was something special, that the way it makes you feel, like you're out there serving the community. That was really hard to step away from.
That pull that you talked about, that's real. And I think that I definitely went through something similar. And there was this decision that I had to make. Did I want to continue at a level 1 trauma, gunshot wounds, stab wounds, car accidents? Is it best for me to affect the community in that way? And am I selling out if I go into like a community-based trauma program? When I did a medical mission trip, I started realizing that there's just other ways in which I can affect life. This episode is brought to you by Set for Life Insurance. Listen, docs, one of the first steps we took to pay off our student loan debt was realizing we paid way too much for our disability insurance. That all changed when we found Set for Life Insurance. They helped us with a customized insurance policy that met our needs and, most of all, budget. To learn more, check out setforlifeinsurance.com. What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Docs Outside the Box. I'm your host, Dr. Nii. As always, I'm joined by my lovely co-host,
Dr. Renée.
Is that the Haitian?
Yeah, that's the Haitian way.
Now, when you say that, is that with a W or?
No, Renée.
Again?
Renée.
Did you roll your R's on that?
No, I didn't roll it on my tongue. I rolled it in the back of my throat.
Renée.
Renée.
Renée. Okay. All right. Well, that's the Haitian way of saying your name. Okay.
Well, it's really the French name. The French way.
Okay. I see.
Yeah.
I see.
Haitian way is Renée.
Okay. So which one do you prefer?
The what my parents called me, because that's my name.
So is that the Creole way that they call you, or the French
no,
way?
they gave me the French version.
Okay.
You know, they hasidity.
Yeah, they are. I guess so. Your parents are cool. And happy birthday to Grandpa Voney. Most recently, his birthday, a couple days ago, his birthday, he turned to 81. So shout out.
Big 81.
Happy birthday to him and stuff. So he came with us to Ghana, had an amazing time.
Yep.
Now he wants to stay. It's like, I don't know if you can get your medical care out here in Ghana and the United States. You're going to have to fly back and forth. But it was good to, I wasn't able to make it because I was studying for boards and stuff, but I was happy to see that
birthday party.
Y'all did a nice celebration for him. And that just kind of capped off the weekend because there's a lot of things to be excited about. Very quickly, I just want to let y'all know what I'm excited about. So by the time this episode comes out, this is the last week. I don't know when this episode is coming out, but basically we're in the first week of September. Basically, kids are in school. College football has started. I'm excited. I'm not a big football person like NFL or anything like that, but college football I'm really excited about because wherever you go, whatever team that you're cheering for, you can't stop but pay attention to Deion Sanders.
You got a problem?
So Deion Sanders, his team now, as we are recording this, they are 2-0. They just beat their second-ranked team, which is Nebraska. And obviously, all the swag, all of the confidence, all of the things that we saw that he had in his career, as well as at Jackson State, and then him leaving, all of that stuff carried with him to Colorado. And they're just, there's a lot of expectations on this year because last year they went 1-11, and this year already they're 2-0. They're ranked in the nation. So it's a big deal. But for me, I'm just like, well, obviously with him having all the success, it's just a timer as to when he's going to go to the next big thing. So
Right.
I only give him about 2 years, and I think he's gone.
You think 2 years?
Yeah, I think 2 years he'll either go to another college or he might end up going to the NFL. But I doubt he'll go to the NFL this early.
You think so?
Yeah, I think it's just different. Like, so whenever you have someone like him, right, he's almost like a disruptor.
Right.
His personality, his swag, his ability to motivate people.
I don't give a damn what they say. You best believe we coming. And guess what? It ain't hard to find.
He's a big-time disruptor. He's very different than the normal traditional coach that comes into NCAAs. Then you throw on top of that the whole dynamic with with athletes not getting paid, athletes kind of just feeling like they're not in control of their destiny. You throw that in there, his situation highlights all of the issues that are occurring in college sports, in good ways and in bad ways. In good ways, obviously you're seeing someone who's had a lot of success in the NFL. Obviously, he's African American. He's doing things that you see are very non-traditional. It's very exciting.
Right.
But also at the same time, he's no different than any other coach. It's just that he has more swagger than other coaches. His ability to recruit is a lot more. He has that ability to motivate people more so than, a regular coach. But there is no difference between his goals of him trying to coach and trying to win and trying to make money eventually
in comparison
to anybody else and stuff. So I just think it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays off, not only with this year as well as for next year. But I do think if he went to the NFL, he would have a big time struggle, mainly because now he's motivating kids who don't have money. Kids who don't have a choice but to go through the system in order to make it to the NFL.
Right.
This is their only option. When you go to the NFL, you're dealing with grown men. They're making multiples, exponential amount of how much you're making as a head coach. Are they going to listen to you? Particularly depending on what the organization structure is. Him being the head coach, he more than likely is not the final say as to what's going to happen. So if a coach disagrees with if a player disagrees with the head coach, a lot of times in the NFL or in professional sports, because that player makes so much money, he can just bypass the head coach and talk to like a general manager or even talk to an owner.
Right.
How's that going to play in this whole scheme of things? So that's something that I think is really interesting if he goes NFL or if he goes, to another college team. And go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was going to ask, like, do you see a similar dynamic in medicine? Not necessarily the bypassing and things like that, but like the going from one place to another, the relationship, of the coach and the players versus like, let's say residents.
I'll just get to it. No.
Nothing like that?
No, I think the only thing that I could say maybe, I think if medicine is so, it's still behind everybody else, all the other industries. College football, whatever industry you can think of.
So you think nobody in medicine could like be that much of a disruptor, that they would actually change the game, if you will?
No. No. I think certain situations, like overall situations like COVID, can occur and it can make sure, like it can make it so that you don't need to have a step 3 examination anymore. Right?
Okay.
Because you can't get people to come together in a large situation. Right. So you get rid of that. I think that you can have people who can mobilize other people maybe to kind of, unless you can get a whole bunch of different residents to strike and say they're not going to work, I don't think that anybody individually can come and make a change to the system. I don't think so at all.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really interesting because, like you said, I've seen a lot. I don't really follow football at all, college or professional, but I've seen a lot of posts about Deion Sanders and things like that. And so I was kind of thinking along the same lines as you, like, man, is anybody in medicine, like, could somebody in medicine come in and just be like, here's the new standard, here's the new thing, here's the way that we're, I'm going to do it this way and that's going to set the standard for it. I agree with you. No. I don't think that anybody.
Well, the other thing, too, is I think the public would push back on someone who is so different than the rest of the other doctors. That would make people very uncomfortable. Yeah. I.e., this person is so different than the way how everybody else does it. Am I going to get the standard of care with this person? That'd always be a concern. Yeah. So I think that, just in general, I think people prefer their pilots and they prefer their doctors not to be someone who's out in the front, all braggadocious and so forth, except in certain cases. But I do think that in general, the public likes their doctors to
run of the
mill, boring, now
chicken parm.
Now it's different with social media, right? Like doctors who are on social media and who are doing, their thing. Yeah, they enjoy it. They find it fun because it gives the public a window into, what their daily life is and so forth.
I think the public enjoys it, but I actually think that within medicine, we actually get pushback from that. There is still I think it's a little looser now, but like medicine was, I think, a little bit more tight knit on why do you have to be on social media? Why do you have to show people, what you're doing? Why do you have to, X, Y, and Z as a doctor? There was a time when, as a doctor, it was frowned upon for you to be on social media, touting or showing or whatever, like just being a doctor. and I'm talking about within the industry. I think patients love it.
I agree. I think times have changed, but times have changed very slowly.
Yeah.
And what does time change mean relatively? Like, are we having a huge monumental shift? No. I think that just because you have a lot more doctors on social media doesn't mean that, you have a major shift that's going on and stuff. So listen, before we get into our next topic, let's go ahead and take a break. We will be right back. Hold up. Before we continue, to all my day ones, and each and every one of you who you are, thank you for rolling with the show from jump. And to the new listeners, welcome. What's good? Where y'all been? I want y'all to stay a while. All right. So look, I'm trying to build a community here and I need your help. So with whatever app you're listening to this show right now, I want you to click the subscribe button. Then I want you to go over to Apple Podcasts and I want you to rate and review the show. And you may be asking, how does this help? The way how it helps is by helping the show to grow and rise up in the rankings so that it's easier for new people to discover the show. Now, what's in it for you is at least once a week, I'm going to be going through these reviews. I'm going to pick a lucky reviewer and I'm going to give that person an opportunity to have a 15-minute session with me where we could talk about anything from personal finance, getting your money right, to just shooting the you-know-what about the show. So listen, remember, all I need you to do is subscribe and then rate and review this show on Apple Podcasts. Let's get on with the episode. Peace. All right, y'all, we are back. Yeah, so moving off of the Deion Sanders thing, all of that stuff is really interesting. I don't see any similarities in medicine. I don't think there's one person who's that charismatic who can come in and change things. But yeah, listen, the other person that I want to shout out to is Coco Gauff.
Okay.
Right? So Coco Gauff, she just won the U.S. Open.
19-year-old. Yeah. Okay.
19-year-old, just won the U.S. Open.
Yeah.
I don't watch tennis as much as I used to, mainly because Serena's just not in it anymore. And talk about someone who's transformative, talk about someone who's electric, someone who you just can't stop watching and so forth.
Yeah.
Coco is...
Serena used to be your girl.
Yeah, I really liked Serena when she first came out.
Yeah.
We'll save that for another episode. I had a little crush on her. And
you
stuff.
did. You had a big crush on Serena.
Yeah.
The med school days.
But that's even before med school, I think.
Well,
she was 98.
That's when I met you. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I remember in med school, you had a big crush on Serena.
Yeah. Well, times have changed. Tastes have changed.
Tastes have changed?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, with Coco Gauff, let's Coco Gauff. So the thing that I find really interesting about this is, I don't know if you've seen on Instagram or on social media, there's videos of her at the U.S. Open like 11 years ago, like in 2012, and she's like dancing in the stands, and you can see her back is to where everybody's playing, and then they fast forward to now, and she's won. And it's just, I just think that that's really cool.
That's
because,
amazing, yeah.
You talk about something that you want something so bad. Like, for example, you want to be a doctor so bad and you can see it, but it's not there, right? Like, you're shadowing somebody who's a physician, or you're getting advice from someone who's a physician, or you're talking to a medical student, you're getting a mentor and so forth, and you want it so bad. Yeah. And this literally is like fast forwarding 11 years for yourself, right?
The reels of your life.
I think that's, I don't know, those type of things are really amazing. Now, obviously, she's one in a million in terms of like her talent, and anyway, but tennis is extremely competitive. And medicine, there's only 1% of people who make it anyway. So I just think that, if you're a medical student, or even before that, if you're a pre-med student, or even before that, if you're someone who just wants to be a doctor, like, you can do it. Just, surround yourself with the right people. Make sure you are surrounding yourself with positive people who can give you some constructive criticism on things that you struggle with, but as well as things that you do really good with, and never give up.
Dance in the stands.
What's your biggest advice for someone who's in maybe not even a pre-med, or even a pre-med who's like, man, I just want to get there, but I got all this like negative. People are telling me that I can't do it.
So I was listening to some other podcast the other day, and there was something that the person said that really stood out. I can't remember which podcast it was, but they said, the only people who ever make it to their goals are people, actually it was whatever. Anyway, the only people
She's like,
the only people that ever actually make it to their goals are the people who don't stop.
correct.
That's it. Like, you just have to keep going. Like, if you stop, then the goal stops. If you don't stop, you'll make it. Like, that's my biggest thing. Like, just keep going.
And then contact you.
And contact me. But, and contact me. But yeah, that's it. You know, like, whoever quit and made it.
Yeah, I get it.
Right.
I always like when you describe people who are struggling and maybe they have failed a test or a board examination or they got some type of negative information and now they're like, should I keep going?
Right.
I don't know which direction to make. And they're spending so much time not moving forward. But you always say, whatever you decide to do or whatever is going on, like time is still going on, right? It doesn't matter. Like even through your indecisiveness, right now, time is still ticking.
Yep.
So you might as well just keep moving forward.
Exactly.
Right, you may not have all the
time will
answers.
pass.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I
the
like
time
that.
will pass. You know, it's whether or not, you know, if it's going to be 4 years, then the question is, okay, that's fine, but where are you going to be in 4 years?
Yeah.
Because 4 years is going to come and go.
Yeah. So make sure you medical student, or sorry, I keep saying medical student, but make sure you pre-meds, you reach out to us. Let Dr. Renee know if you need some help. She can give you some advice. She obviously has her Medic app right here. You can click on that right there or use your QR code. Should be able to see it on the screen.
No, you can just go to the App Store, remember?
That's true. Tell them where to find it.
App Store, Google Play. Look at you, plug-in Medic. What's up with you today?
I'm giving you props.
What?
Giving you props today. But listen, let's change directions real quick. I want you to take a look at this, and I want to get your thoughts on that. So this is a post from Dr. Hussein. She is a trauma surgeon as well as a mother of 6.
Yeah.
And it actually is really pointed into the interview that we're going to be leading into with Dr. Stephen Bradley. So I want you to take a listen to this, okay?
Stop trying to fit into your workplace. Hi, I'm Dr. Qaali Hussein, full-time trauma surgeon and mom of 6. One thing that navigating the world of surgery as a Black, hijabi, Muslim woman and mother taught me is that fitting in means compromising your values and who you are. They tell you that's what you have to do to succeed. The truth is, none of that is necessary. You can maintain your values and your authenticity and thrive in your work. To learn more about thriving in your career as your authentic self.
So we're not trying to plug all that other stuff at the end. But later on, she, you know, if she wants to come on the show, we can talk about that stuff. But what did you think about what she said? Because I thought it was really interesting what she said about fitting in, right? And are you losing yourself when you try to fit in? Thoughts?
So literally yesterday, one of my mentees, who's a resident, wrote me a text message, and she's looking to switch her OBGYN residency program to another program. And one of the
Another
things,
specialty or just
no,
go,
another OB
so go from
program.
OB to another OB program, all right?
And the one thing that she said that really got me thinking was, she said something about fitting in. She's like, I just don't fit in here. And
I hear that a lot.
yeah, I don't fit in here. And, you know, she kind of referenced her seniors, you know, blah, 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 and things like that. And she's like looking to switch. But, you know, a couple of things that I said to her was that, you know, one of the things that I learned a long time ago is that, you know, where you work has a lot to do, so where you work has less to do with what you're doing and more about who you work with, right? Do you have colleagues that you can work well with? You know, do you feel supported? Things like that, right? But the fitting in kind of plays a part in that.
Correct.
Right? The other thing, though, is that things change pretty rapidly in residency. Because my first year of residency, I didn't feel like I fit in at all. And I actually went to quit, ended up staying. And what I said to her was, you may not thrive, you know, or feel like you fit in when you are an intern. But as you move up the ranks, that actually might change. You actually might bond better with your juniors than your seniors, which is actually what happened to me. And I think the reason...
Let your seniors go out to pasture, basically.
Yes.
Let them, once they leave the program, they're not coming back.
Exactly.
But how you affect the program with your juniors behind you, that makes a really big difference. that is on key. That's on point. I love that. That's a really good
Exactly.
point.
Because then you can set a new stage.
Yeah.
Right? You can set a new stage. So whereas for me, my seniors were like, oh, you can't go to the bathroom, you can't eat, you can't do this, you can't do that, you only have to work, stay on the floor. I was like, I will never do that to my juniors. And so that kind of changed the game for me, and it changed the relationship that I had with my juniors in comparison to the relationship I had with my seniors.
So the way how I look at it is similar to that question that you asked about Deion Sanders. Like, is there going to be a transformative person who can come and change everything? And my answer initially is no. Right? But I do think that you can have like small little micro changes in your program by being who you are. Like the overall healthcare system or your overall residency, for the most part, like the ebbs and flows, that's not going to change much. Right? But you have to be who you are. You have to stay who you are so that at the end of the day, you can always look at yourself in the mirror.
Right.
That's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
So for me, I will just say that the system is going to move on with you whether you're in it or you're not in it.
Right.
So you might as well just be who you are. You might as well just be who you is, right? Just be who you is.
Be who I am.
And just go from there, because ultimately what the most important thing right now is that making sure that you pass your boards, you do well on on whatever tests you got to take, you taking care of patients, you're there on time, and you make people look good, and that's it. But how you dress, what you wear, the hair all these different things, that has nothing to do with the situation. I think oftentimes we make it harder on ourselves. And granted, depending on what type of background you come from, you may feel like you're a guest always.
Yes.
And you feel like, you know what, like, as hard as it was for me to get in, it might be just as easy for me to get kicked out. So let me just act appropriately. And that's a problem that I think a lot of people have, including me. That was an issue that I had when I went into residency. I was like, I'm the first DO resident. I got to make sure
all the chips on your shoulder.
I got to make sure I'm on point. When I was in medical school and I was like, I'm just, maybe they just may find out who I really am and so forth.
Imposter.
But you look back and you're just like, look, just be you and go through the things that you need to do. Take care of your boards, pass your scores, be there on time, be cordial, make sure you work in a team. Other than that, everything else is, it is who it is and stuff. But before we move on real quick in this interview, I want to state something really quick, because what she said is that you lose a little bit of yourself, right? And I do think a lot of that has to do with burnout, or does lead to burnout, or possibly depression. And it's not just me saying this. So there's a Medscape study that came out earlier this year, and it's called Physician Burnout and Depression Report of 2023. I'm gonna give you some stats. 9,000 doctors were surveyed. 53% said that they were burned out. Actually, they did this study 5 years. They did this study 5 years before, and only 42% were burned out. So 53% of doctors of these 9,000 said that they are burned out.
COVID.
23% COVID had a big part. Big part, but not as big as you think it is. 23% say that they are depressed. The doctors that are most burnt out are ER docs. I don't think that's a surprise.
Right.
Second, that's 65%. So 65% of ER docs say that they are burnt out. 60% of internal medicine doctors say that they are burnt out. And then between men and women, who do you think are more burnt out, men or women?
Women.
Yeah. So women, 63% of women say that they are burnt out. Men, 46%.
Yeah.
And then the biggest contributor to being burnt out is too many bureaucratic tasks. 61% of docs say that.
Click.
It's the red
click,
stuff,
click.
The medical EMR system, all of those different things contribute the most to their burnout. So no big shock right there. So I just wanted to get your opinion on that, because I thought that post was really timely, very interesting, because sometimes you start to think like, the system is the same as it was in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. Just because you saw that you wanted to do this off of TV, or maybe aspiring to do this off of a great mentor, doesn't mean you know all the intricacies of getting through medicine. But the question is should you necessarily change your complete who you are in order to survive? I say no. And I know that a lot of people will say, well, Dr. Darko, you made it through, so obviously you can go back and say all those different things. Trust me, there are specific points in my career where I look back and I'm like, I would have done that differently. I would not saying that I would have like yelled at somebody or an attending or anything like that, but I would have defended my stance a little bit more, or I would have believed in myself a little bit more instead of trying to quote unquote assimilate. So, but anyway, that leads to actually the meat and potatoes of this episode. It almost seems like we went through a whole episode right here.
I know, before we got to the meat and potatoes.
But we got Dr. Stephen Bradley. He is host of the Black Doctors podcast, which is an amazing podcast. But It went on hiatus because he, in essence, almost went on hiatus. So he's in the military. He's an anesthesiologist by training, and he decided to go back to the University of Chicago and do a 1-year fellowship in critical care. It's really great. It's an amazing experience. But I brought him on to really get his thoughts on a couple things. One, what's he doing with his career right now that he's out of the military and he's actually working as an anesthesiologist and critical care doc? What's the big change in his salary? And also, what did he negotiate? And after coming out of this, you will see that we're actually, like, it's just amazing how, like, people can be on different wavelengths about what they should negotiate versus what they shouldn't. You know, for me, it's always, you know, I always want to make sure that it's very easy to get into a contract and it's also very easy to get out of a contract.
Yes.
I always want to know those terms. I don't know why it's always big for me. But in this episode, you'll see that really wasn't that big of a deal for him. There were some other things. And then also he's going to give us an update on things that he's doing creatively, as well as what is next for the Black Doctors podcast.
Interesting. Okay.
All right, y'all. Without further ado, let's jump into this episode with Dr. Stephen Bradley. If you're looking for a podcast that moves the health conversation outside of the box, then I highly recommend Healthy Conversations, the acclaimed podcast from CVS Health. Hosted by Dr. Daniel Kraft, the Harvard and Stanford-trained physician scientist, Healthy Conversations provides cutting-edge information about the forefront of medical practice. On each episode, Dr. Kraft sits down for one-on-one interviews with doctors and tech innovators who are transforming healthcare to address some of the most pressing issues. If you're looking for entrepreneurial inspiration, then I recommend their episode on how the NHS evolved to support physician entrepreneurs. This is where Dr. Kraft interviews Dr. Tony Young of England's National Health Service on medical innovation. Or listen to their recent conversation on neurodiversity with legendary animal behaviorist and autism advocate Temple Grandin. So look, don't miss out. Listen to Healthy Conversations from CVS Health. It's available for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening to this podcast. Link is in the show notes. Yo, what's good, everyone? I got Dr. Stephen Bradley here. Dr. Stephen, welcome back to Docs Outside the Box. How you doing, man?
I'm good. It's been a minute. A lot's changed, so glad to be back.
Yeah, the last time we talked, you were still in the military. And I forget what part of the world or the country you were. I think you were in Virginia or something like that.
Yeah, I was in Norfolk.
Yeah, you were in Virginia and you were considering doing a fellowship or getting ready to do a fellowship. But talk to us. Where you at? What's going on right now?
Exactly. Yeah, right now, you know, a lot's changed. So I did finish my time in the military, so separated from the Navy a year ago, so in 2022. And then I went back to the University of Chicago for my critical care medicine fellowship, finished that up, and now just working. Took a job down in Florida doing anesthesia and critical care.
So why go back to fellowship? Because I know inherently in anesthesia anyway, like you get critical care training. So why go back to why go back to fellowship? My bad. I was about to step you down a little bit.
Yeah, well, I did. I took that step down back from attending life to fellowship.
Hey,
and yeah,
that pay is a big deal, as well as someone telling you what to do. But we're gonna get into that in a second. But tell me why you want to do all that?
The reason was, you know, I went into anesthesia to do critical care medicine as a medical student at Howard. I was working with Dr. Saram, Dr. Wendy Green, and rotating through the surgical ICU at Howard. That's where I developed a love for critical care. I remember having a talk with Dr. Wendy Green during a trauma call about critical care medicine and how to get into the field, because at that time I was going to do trauma surgery. I thought that was the only way in. And she explained, you know, there's pulmonary critical care medicine, there's anesthesia critical care. And then the love for exactly. Well, you know, a little more chair time, not on our feet quite as much. So I went to anesthesia to ultimately do critical care medicine. And I had some delays because I took that military service commitment at the end of residency when people would normally be applying to fellowship. I had to reach out to the Navy, random people. Like I dug up an email address because once you join the military, they kind of like forget about you. And so I found a random person who was the detailer. I'm like, he sounds like a big deal. Let me ask him, can I do an ICU fellowship before I start my 4-year service obligation? And he was like, the first thing he said back was, use your proper name, rank, and title when addressing officers. I'm like, okay, that's weird. What is my rank and title? I don't even know. So he's like, oh, you Lieutenant Bradley, yada, yada. So I emailed him back. He basically says, no, the military does not need critical care trained physicians. Just come on as a general anesthesiologist. So that delayed me for the 4 years.
I still think it's really interesting that, you got to have someone let you know if you can go and specialize or not. But that's the name of the game. They pay for your, they give you money, and then in return, they kind of have a little bit of control while you're there. So when it was time for you to go back, you got into critical care, it's time to go back and become, a fellow again. Like you used to over the past 4 years being an attending, making attending decisions. Like you are at the top of making the decision. Nobody's asking you any questions. You tell people what you want to do. What was it like going back, someone telling you what to do? I know you was like, yo, shut the F up, man. Like, I already know what I'm doing. What was that like?
It actually wasn't bad. Number one, I was in the military, so there was some degree of like following orders and just doing some stuff that's absolutely ridiculous and asinine and frustrating, but you're just following orders. So that wasn't a big deal. And number two, I'm learning a new specialty, even though, I did, 5-6 months of ICU during residency. But I was,
you understand vents. You know how to put in central lines. Like, you know how to put them to sleep. I mean, be honest. Like, let the people know so they, like, from what you do as an anesthesiologist to critical care, that's really not that big of a difference, right? Am I lying?
There's a lot of overlap, but when you get into the subspecialties, so rotating through the neuro ICU and seeing like that degree, and then the trauma surgical ICU, like actually working with the surgeons, I was able to learn a lot of seeing how they deal with stuff. More of the hands-on
SIMV on the vent, and stop drying out our patients. That's it. Those are the only 3 things you need to know. That's it.
Yeah. Then the medical ICU, that was a whole thing.
Lasix
too. The oncology stuff is crazy in the ICU. If you have the medical ICU patients, they love the lung stuff, the pulmonary fibrosis and all that, and then transplant stuff. So it was very helpful. Now, following orders, like it wasn't, I hedged my bets and went back to where I did residency. So going back to the University of Chicago, most of my, all of my crit care attendings were the same people that I worked with as a resident. A couple were like my classmates, working with them. So it was, a mutual respect. Like nobody was talking down to me. They kind of understood, hey, Steve's been in practice. It was cool to see the general surgery residents because they were like PGY 1s and 2s when I left. And now they're the big bad chiefs stomping around. I'm looking at them like, I knew you when you just got here. So it was a good time.
But the same way that you looking at them is the same way that I'm sure you looking at your colleagues or your, the attendings who are critical care attendings, and you're like, dude, like you was my co-resident before, that's got to be a very interesting situation.
It was honestly very relaxing because as the attending, you're on the hook for all these decisions. And now I had a year where I'm like, all right, I'm going to step out of the driver's seat. I'm going to be the co-pilot, and I'm going to see how you drive a ship. And like, I would do this way, or communication-wise, I would do things differently. But it was actually very liberating to not have that level of responsibility.
So you got to be a backseat driver.
Oh, yeah. It was a good time.
All right, real quick. Talk about the pay, because that's got to be, half your salary right there, what you used to? Maybe even more?
Barely,
and you live in Chicago?
Well, I was in the Navy, remember? So the Navy salary was like $120,000 a year as an anesthesiologist. That's what I started out at. My first 6 months then.
But as a fellow, like you can't be making more than 50.
No, it's like 70, 72.
What?
Bro, you've been out for a minute. Inflation, my guy.
That's when I'm old. Yeah, they're in the 70s now?
Yeah. And then you saw I think Harvard, they just unionized. There's been a lot of pressure, right? Because like the young folks aren't putting up with these salaries anymore, and people are protesting, and residencies are like organizing unions. And matter of fact, like a couple months in, the university just like gave us extra money. Like they're starting to try to like at least tell people, hey, chill out. We're going to pay you a little bit more. So yeah, it was like 70 grand. So it wasn't a huge pay cut from my military salary.
Got you. But that's also 70 in Chicago. So I'm sure you could only be 15, 20 minutes away?
From the hospital?
Yeah. So that puts you like in Hyde Park, the South Side?
Yeah, I was in the South Side, but one, they didn't really have a callback requirement. And two, well, my wife, I came back married, so we had dual income, which was very helpful. And then the GI Bill, I was actually able to use some of the GI Bill to cover. They gave me like a housing stipend because I was a full-time student, quote unquote.
Okay, I got you. All right, so this is 1 year training, right?
1 year.
1 year training. So I'm assuming once you start getting into January, February, you should have already been you were at your point where you were interviewing, or at least making the final decisions.
I had a job as of about January, beginning of January.
Okay, and this job now, so the job that you're working right now, is this critical care and anesthesia? I couldn't remember from the beginning.
I'm 50-50, so I do a week in the ICU and every month, and then 2 weeks in the operating rooms.
Is this still the military, or are you
I'm out. This is,
okay.
I'm at a Moffitt Cancer Center. It's a facility down in Tampa, Florida.
Okay. So what's this like? What, 1 week on? What's your work schedule like?
It's great, right? So as I was transitioning out of fellowship, there was a huge pull for me to stay super high speed, cutting edge, go to a place that had transplants and trauma and all these, high acuity cases, because this is what I trained for. And then I kind of stumbled into this opportunity, which is at a large cancer center. It's a new endeavor where they opened a new hospital. They're building out their critical care program. The patient population is different from what I've usually worked with, which is why, like, back when I was in the medical ICU, I was like, let me learn a little bit more about oncology patients and onco intensive care. And the volume is a lot lower. The acuity is less. There's no OB. There's no trauma. There's no ER. So that was kind of the things that pulled me. It felt bad to step away from the trauma, because like on the south side of Chicago, I mean, we were saving.
Why you feel bad?
It's that pull. It's like we're saving lives. Like every day I go into work, man, there's young brothers that are coming in, paralyzed, shot up, and they get to wake up and look at me taking care of them, and that was something special that it's hard the way it makes you feel like you're out there serving the community.
Right.
That was really hard to step away from. But we're closer to family. My wife, she could see the things that I would go through at work, and then come back and I'm tired and I'm stressed, and
you bring work home with you. It's so hard to bring home work home with you, yo.
She's like, "How was your day?" And I'm like, "Oh, I mean, I don't really want to talk about it. I saw 2 people die." And like, I'm actually pretty good with compartmentalizing, but it's hard to relate, and that was really stressful. So this situation was great. She's happy. I'm in better spirits. My schedule when I'm in the ICU is Monday through Sunday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., or if I'm on nights, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. Then I have a week off. And then the last 2 weeks of the month, I would be in the operating rooms kind of Monday through Friday. And those days are like, 6:30, get to the hospital at 6:30, set up for cases for the day, supervise 2 or 3 rooms, and then finish in the afternoon, 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock.
That pool that you talked about, being at a University of Chicago, seeing the trauma patients come through, the majority of those patients are going to be young. They're going to look like you, particularly with the violence issue over there. That's real. And I think that I definitely went through something similar about 10 years ago. So I spent my training in Atlanta for Grady, and then I went down to the University of Miami. So Knife and Gun Club of Atlanta to the Knife and Gun Club of Miami. And there was this decision that I had to make. Like, did I want to continue at a level 1 trauma, high acuity, gunshot wounds, stab wounds, car accidents, all of those different things? Is it best for me to affect the community in that way? And am I selling out if I go into like a community-based trauma program? And my heart told me to stay in that, in that setting, as a surgeon, like I directly can affect that, right? Or can I affect in different ways? And, for me, I think the biggest thing is when I did a medical mission trip, and then I started realizing that there's just other ways in which I can affect life. I can affect, the way in which, people's daily experiences are. And once I did a medical mission trip, that was it. I was hooked. And I decided that for me, it'd be a little bit easier if I was in a community-based program where I was in more control of my schedule than being at that. But I definitely feel what you're saying, and I definitely understand that pull. But I want to fast forward real quick to where you're at with your current job, and I'm actually very interested. So in terms of salary, right? So now you don't have to tell me exact numbers, but I'm assuming it's a lot more, it's a big difference between where you were in the military to where you're at now, right?
Oh, yeah. I was actually just, I was late to this interview because I was with one of my former Navy buddies watching a football game, and we were just kind of talking about life outside the service. I doubled my military salary easily, and it's, I get paid kind of the average academic rate for an anesthesiologist, but I do have a lot more time off. I have 8 weeks of vacation, and with my ICU time, it's about a week off a month, but I still doubled my military salary.
So talk to me about negotiating, because I think that's another thing that I think listeners on the show need to start hearing more of. Where's there opportunities for you to negotiate a various amount of things? I think the number one thing that people always think about is your salary. Did you negotiate that? Or did you negotiate time off? Did you negotiate other things? What was like the priority when you came into, looking at your contract? What did you decide to negotiate?
Yeah, that's a tough one because everybody like talks about negotiations and it's like, did you take just whatever deal was offered? For anesthesia, there's a lot of times not much wiggle room.
Don't do it, Dr. Steven. Don't say it. Come on, yo.
The
Dr.
private
Steve, don't
groups.
do it. Come on.
The private groups are starting to dry up. So yeah, you negotiated this amazing package and you're on a partnership track, but a year into that partnership track, your group's getting sold to a national corporation.
Right.
This stuff happens across the country at an alarming rate, and like the market here in Tampa for private anesthesia gigs, it's a mess. There's a lot of big national groups, which they really don't negotiate. The locums market is incredible. You can definitely negotiate, but then you're moving around. Academic anesthesia.
Not necessarily, but keep going up.
Okay. Yeah, I'd love to hear that. You're the locums guru. Academic anesthesia is kind of set. They'll tell you what it is and it isn't.
But what university is your hospital associated with?
Which currently?
Yeah, your hospital. Isn't that its own hospital?
Yeah, right now, so I took a private-demic gig. It's like it's Moffitt Cancer Center, so it's affiliated with USF, but it's its own thing as a Moffitt medical group.
Gotcha.
And the thing I like about their structure is it's all a step system. So you're, assistant member, associate, and then full member kind of mirrors the assistant, associate, professor. And depending on your time and rank, that's your salary. So it's a little bit more transparent. And what I ended up negotiating for was time and rank based upon my academic time. So I came in with a couple of years and I'm closer to making associate. So that was my negotiation. But what I saw dealing with other academic programs, and I interviewed at, everything else was academic. I didn't think I interviewed at one private practice. The academic programs were offering in the mid threes, and they pretty much all were just going to start you off as an assistant professor. I didn't interview at like the Harvards that start you off at like clinical instructor, but they were going to start you off as, assistant professor, and you have your 4 weeks of vacation and you have to negotiate for your protected time. Usually you work 4 days a week in academic anesthesia, and you have like 10%, that's your 10% protected time. And you have to really fight for anything more than that. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of what was the blanket. And if you really like an academic program, now you can negotiate. You can fight for your protected time. You got to show, what am I going to do research in? How are you going to recoup your investment? And then the thing that I found out is a lot of these academic programs have these little like different funds, like endowments or something. Yeah. And if they really want you, they dip into that money.
Oh, yeah.
And this thing, it's another 30 grand, 50 grand, 60 grand that they're going to supplement your salary with. And that's when I realized, like, so all these people that you may be working with at your academic facility that doesn't negotiate, look around at those professors, they're probably making a lot more than you think they are. But coming in, they're not going to offer you that.
No. So okay, so what are the things that you negotiated then at your current spot?
Academic time. So or time and rank, essentially. So
what does that mean? Be specific. What does that mean?
So I'm an assistant member level 3.
What does that mean?
So I'm about like 2 years away from promoting to associate.
Okay, so because sometimes some people don't understand. I sometimes don't even know what that means. What's the difference in the associate versus assistant? Like, what does that mean? More time off? You have to write more book? Like, what does that mean?
No, for my gig, it's mostly salary, but at other academic places, it is like your protected time for research. It's probably tied to your salary as well. Most places, yeah, you get a pay bump when you make associate, and then again when you make a full professor. But depending on the program, like the Ivy League will start you off as a clinical instructor, I've heard, for several years, where you're not even an assistant professor. After a couple of years, you've earned your way to become an assistant professor through research or, scholarly endeavors. And there's different time courses. So some places you're going to be an assistant for 7 or 8 years. Some places, like the place I'm at now, is essentially a 5-year promotion scale, which is something else that I really liked about this program.
Okay. And when you say protected time, that means the amount of time in a calendar, let's say in a month, that is not related to what you do, putting people to sleep, doing stuff clinically. Like, this is like protected time is so that you can do what, research and administrative type BS, all those type of things, right?
Yeah. A lot of places, like for academic anesthesia jobs, you only work typically 4 days a week, and then there's your call. But that 5th day of the week, depending on the department, they're going to want you in-house or available, or you be on like a list to potentially cover if you're short, because they kind of want to see you even though you're not really working.
Or some places epidurals and blocks and all that stuff.
Well, yeah, sometimes, but you're technically non-clinical. But some places, depending on their staffing, will be able to okay, we're going to pull you back for today, so we need you available. So that's something else as you're looking for jobs. Like with your protected time, can I work from home? Can I just sit at home and write a paper? Or do you want me to come to campus for my quote unquote protected time?
What's the scoop of your job? Where you got?
What's that?
Do you have to? Can you be at home, or you got to come in?
Yeah. So my job, it depends. Like right now, it's encouraged to be on site for the protected time, but I don't at the moment have any protected time. I just have a ton of time off between my off service weeks, which again, like I'm not expected to be, on campus at all after my post ICU week, and then my vacation time. So,
okay, all right. So the question I want to ask you actually is, now that you are like in your, because now you've been out. Now we're talking about 3 months now, 4 months
from fellowship. 3 months. So
now that you're doing that, you're kind of in the swing of things and so forth. Like, I know that there's like this renewed effort for you to be more creative. There's more creativity that's going into what you're putting out on social media. Take us through that story, and then let's kind of lead into what's going on with your podcast and let us know more about that.
Yeah. The biggest thing is just time. I have my time back. So in the military, towards the last couple years I was in, I'd finished my boards. I had a ton of time to do on the podcast, to make music. And then I kind of had to hang that up when I went back for fellowship, just because of the workload. There were some months that were lighter. I was on like a radiology elective, and I had some time to create some music during my fellowship. But overall, it was still an ICU fellowship. Now I just have a ton of time off because the job is very big on work-life balance, less stressful, lower acuity. So one, I have a lot more time to be in this creative space. And number two, I'm hedging my bets because I got my boards coming up in October. So I am studying for that a lot. So I'm not just all in on the music and podcasting, but after October, I'm looking forward to really getting into music and dropping. I'm working on a lo-fi channel. That'll be the goal, to get that up by the end of the year.
Make sure I get the link for that, because everybody, for me, lo-fi works for me. So what exactly is lo-fi, so people know? Let us know what that is.
Yeah. So lo-fi is like lo-fi hip hop. It has a bunch of ambient noises and sounds, and so low fidelity. So instead of a very high fidelity music production where you have a bunch of instruments, lo-fi is often just like a pad, which is a kind of a soft synthesizer sound. You got a very mellow, compressed drum beat. You got a little bass line and a very simple melody line. And they're slower songs, usually about 65 to 75 beats per minute. And people love it because usually they don't have lyrics. It's easy to study too. It's has a very relaxing, calming effect.
I agree.
Has a little bit of,
it doesn't put you to sleep. It's just calm enough that you can focus, but it doesn't put you to sleep. and is not distracting. I love it. I love it. And I'm glad that you got into it.
Yeah. So I that's my goal with the music. And of course, getting some extra instruments now that I have a full salary. So
look at you. You got money now.
Time. Oh, yeah.
You got money now. Okay. It's all right. Now, what's up with the podcast? Tell us, obviously, we know the podcast that you host, the very important, the Black Doctors podcast. What's new? What's coming up? What's coming down the streamline?
Man, it's a labor of love. So the podcast, we're in our third year. I say we, I have Nate Jones, my co-host, but 3 years in, same thing. During fellowship, it was tough to be consistent. Like the very last month or two.
You make it too hard, though. You make it too hard, though. That's the problem. You make it too hard. You be trying to make these complex topics. Bruh, just let us know how you doing. That's it. People will listen, but you go ahead. I'm going to hold you. Go ahead.
Work in progress. So it's been great, having some time back. July was the relaunch, and be able to put more time in the production quality, working on outsourcing different aspects of the show and scaling the podcast. I actually started a company or business or LLC, whatever it is, EquiHealth Media Consultants. So looking to be kind of a starter or incubator for other people that want a platform. The music would also kind of fall under that LLC because it's communications related, but hopefully getting into some video production, some audio production, and just helping take the work off of people that say, I want to do X, Y, and Z. I want to get this thought across, and then I want to help them do that. So the podcast is growing after October, after boards. It's hopefully really taken off, and then bringing on some more people, maybe some interns to help with some of the production work and some of the topics, and just get back to that root mission of presenting the stories of underrepresented and medicine minority physicians, and with the goal of inspiring those pre-meds and medical students.
Excellent. I love it, man. I love it. It's a really good podcast. I encourage all of you all to take a listen to it. And I appreciate you getting a little bit into the micro of how much you get paid before you did this fellowship in the military, how much you getting paid as a resident. I did not know fellows was making that much, yo. It's been a minute. I gotta go back.
Yeah.
I gotta plug back in. Yeah, I gotta plug back in. And then obviously the jump to being an attending and doing all those things. And for me, I think it's really important to kind of understand, you as an attending, what you negotiate, what you don't negotiate, what's important to you versus what's not important. And I think, a lot of times, we get enamored with the salary, but we don't necessarily talk about the things that are other deal breakers. And for me, I always tell people you always got to look at a contract to find out, what's the most important way to get into the contract, right? How do you get into a contract, and then how do you get out of the contract? And then the other things that retain your ability to say no, because I think that's the most powerful thing, more so than even salaries. It's I'm going to say no if you ask me to take extra call, and there shouldn't be any retribution for that. But that's hard. And it's not for everybody. Yeah.
Now, I'll say briefly, one of the things that the green flags was that there's a lot of folks at this job that have been here for forever and are just happy and relaxed. The level of stress that I did not see and the people I interviewed with was okay, this is a hidden gem.
Got you. All right, Dr. Stephen, man, thank you for catching up. We'll catch you on maybe another episode where we can collaborate. All right.
Absolutely. Always here for it.